What's up guys, Matt Day here, and I'm finally back with a camera review, and that camera is the Pentax 645N. I bought this camera early in the year, and my primary goal for using this camera was just going to be for my portrait work, for weddings, engagements, family sessions, anything like that. That was really the main goal behind, buying this camera. That was what I was going to be using it for. But I actually found myself using it a lot more for even just personal work, especially early on whenever I first got it, because it was a camera that I really gravitated towards pretty quickly whenever I first started shooting with it, and it's really different from a lot of the film cameras that I typically use. This camera has a lot of automation available. It's, you can obviously shut things off and make it more of a manual camera, and we'll get into all that stuff here in just a minute. But it was a camera that was really different for me with automatically winding the film and things like that. It was just different from the typical camera I use for my own personal work. Things like that were great for shooting portraits and doing things on the job. It was nice to have that automation in a lot of different settings, and we'll talk about that. But it is a camera I've really enjoyed using, and I found myself using it way more than I ever expected to, and it's something that I would definitely recommend to people if you're looking for a little bit more automation. So if you're looking for things like automatic exposure, or at least aperture priority, or if you want to have autofocus, which this camera actually has really reliable autofocus if you're using one of the autofocus lenses. They do make lenses for this system that aren't autofocus, but they do have plenty of them to choose from that do offer autofocus, and it really is pretty accurate and pretty quick for a lot of medium format cameras that have autofocus. Sometimes they can be a little bit slow, but this camera has always been really quick and accurate, and I've used it plenty myself in the field, mostly early on, because as I got more comfortable with the system, I found myself switching it into manual focus and just doing things manually, and that's kind of how I prefer to focus anyway, just because I want to make sure I'm kind of relying on myself and not the camera, because even whenever it is accurate, sometimes it's nice just to be, making sure you're dialed in there and really kind of trust your own eye. And the more I shot with this camera, the easier that became. And the viewfinder itself, it's a stock viewfinder. I didn't upgrade it or anything, but it's extremely bright for a stock focusing screen, and that just makes manual focusing even easier. But it's a camera I've really enjoyed using, obviously, as I've gone on and on about it, and I've mentioned it in a lot of different videos, and you guys have asked about it. So what we're going to go ahead and do, though, is I'm going to give you guys a closer look at the camera, and we're going to load some film in there so that way you guys can see how everything works. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take a closer look here at the camera. I went ahead and removed this strap just so it's out of the way, but people always ask me what this strap is anytime they see it in a video. It's a strap from Think Tank Photo. It's just a really simple, plain camera strap, but it's one I really like, and yeah, I figured I would mention that since you guys are curious all the time. The kind of strap lugs, while I'm talking about it, it's the same kind of mount as the Pentax 6.7 strap is, so if you already have some of those little strap lugs laying around, definitely hang on to those, because sometimes they're hard to find, and sometimes they're a little bit more expensive than they should be, but that's the kind of strap it takes. But overall, the camera, size-wise, it's a lot bigger than I think people think whenever they first pick up the camera, but if you're used to shooting medium format, it's really not that much bigger than any of the other cameras. And if you're shooting like a DSLR or anything like that, or just a regular SLR that's built like a modern one, the form factor of it is pretty familiar, and the 645N has a pretty comfortable grip. It's a little bit recessed in here that kind of gives you a good grip, nothing crazy advanced or anything, and it's not like it's this really soft material, but it's sturdy, it's easy to get a good grip on the camera. But we'll go ahead and just kind of take a look around at everything just so you guys can see where everything's at. Up here on top of the camera, you have all your different dials. Over here, this is where you're going to control your exposure compensation, and then right here is your shutter speed dial, which goes all the way from 1,000th of a second all the way to 4 seconds. That's the longest, standard shutter speed, but you also have a bulb setting if you want to do long exposures. So it's having a maximum shutter speed of 1,000th of a second is nice. A lot of medium format cameras will often go to 1/500th of a second, so you have an extra stop there, which is really convenient. You also have your hot shoe up here, and on the viewfinder right here, this dial is your diopter, so you can adjust that whether you're wearing glasses or not. Right here is just your on and off switch, and you can see if you turn it just one step, you can see it's on this little almost like a sound icon, and then you switch it over to on. Both of these are on, but this little sound icon, that just means it's going to beep whenever your autofocus locks in. So if you want to have just that audible confirmation that your focus is locked, you can have that on, or if you don't want to hear that beep, you just switch it all the way over to on, and now you're not going to hear the beep. Right here, this is what you're going to use to control, your ISO. So if you hold in the ISO button and then you move in the up and down buttons here, you're going to be able to change your ISO, which the ISO is, if I remember right, I couldn't find it the first time I used this camera. Where is it? Oh, right here, yeah. So you have this little dial here. On top of the camera, this little switch. Whenever you slide it over like that, you see it's pointing to ISO, and then you can control the ISO setting right here. So yeah, the first time I was trying to change my ISO, I could not figure it out, but that's all it is. It's just that little switch right there. Okay, also over here on the camera you have this ML button that stands for mirror lockup. So while you're shooting, if you want to lock up your mirror, all you have to do is hit that, and then your mirror is going to lock up and you can shoot it, and that's just going to make sure you're basically cutting down on the vibrations of the camera. Also up here you have your different shooting modes around your shutter release button. So you have this single frame, which stands for single frame, and then you switch it over to this one where it's several frames stacked up, and that means continuous shooting. It's obviously nothing crazy fast in today's standards, but you do have the continuous option there, and then all the way over to here to have it on self-timer. So that's pretty much it for that aspect. You do have a threaded option here for like a soft shutter release or a cable release, so that's really nice. While we're talking about this, I'll go ahead and let you guys hear the camera. Oh, I'm on autofocus here. Let me turn that off first. So that's 1/1000th of a second. And now I'll put it on the slower speed, like 1/4 of a second. So that last sound you hear is actually it, going to advance the film. There's no film in there right now, but obviously on this camera, you're gonna advance the film automatically in between frames. So you don't have to take the photo and then advance the film yourself. It's gonna do it all for you. Also, I'll go ahead and turn the autofocus on so you guys can hear the beep. So I'll put the autofocus on, which is just this little switch right here on the lens, and also I will turn it on to the beep sound. So let's focus over here. There you go, you can kind of hear the beep. My office is really dark, so it's kind of focusing on nothing right now. There you go. Maybe. Oh, it's too close. There you go. You get the point. Anyway, that's how the autofocus works. Also, right here you have your depth of field preview. So if you're shooting at f8 or anything higher than wide open and you want to see what your depth of field is going to be like, just hold that in while you're looking through the viewfinder, and it's going to give you that. Over here on this side, you have a tripod mount, which is nice because if you're shooting things vertically, you don't have to turn your tripod head on its side. You can mount it right here, and that's pretty convenient. Over here, you also have things for double exposure. So if you want to shoot double exposures, you just flip this switch, and that'll make sure that whenever you shoot you shoot a photo, it's not going to advance the film. The film is going to stay in place, so you can shoot multiple exposures, however many you want. So yeah, not necessarily double exposure, but just multiple exposure in general. On the back of the camera, you can see where the film insert goes, and then you can also see your different metering modes. So right here, you can have it go from like a spot meter, or this is your AF point. You can have the AF point going from kind of right in the middle feel or kind of almost like a tracking kind of mode. Up here underneath the shutter speed dial, that's where you're going to be able to change your metering mode. So you can change it from to having the meter where it's right dead in the center, or you can have it kind of average things out from your entire scene, basically whatever your viewfinder is looking at. But as far as the film insert itself, the one thing that people I guess aren't aware of whenever they think about getting this camera is that you don't have film backs, you just have film inserts. So this isn't a kind of system where you can take the insert off or the film back off and put color film in and then switch out, different kind of film mid-roll. This is, once this is locked in, you're going to shoot the entire roll before you can take it out. So that is one advantage that other cameras have that have film backs, where you can actually change mid-roll. But for most of my uses, personally, I haven't really found that to be an issue because I've kind of always been used to that with different cameras. So it's not really a big deal, but something I do want to mention. Also, this is a 120 back, meaning it's going to shoot 120 film. They do sell 220 backs, and you can convert them to shoot 120. They're cheaper to buy than 120 backs. That's why a lot of people do it. I personally had some 220 backs that were converted, and I kind of had some issues. The camera felt like it was almost dying on me as it would advance the film, and in a setting where I'm out on the job, I didn't want to take any chances, so I only personally use 120 backs in the camera, but you do have that option. There's plenty of places online if you look up how to convert it, but it's just something I wouldn't really recommend. I would just stick to buying 120 inserts and not having to worry about anything. Also on the bottom of the camera, you do have another tripod mount, so it's not just on this side. You also have it right there as well. As far as the lens goes, you can mount the lens with this little button right here. What I have on here right now, this is the 75mm 2.8 FA, and that FA means it has autofocus. I don't know why they call it FA and not AF for autofocus, but it is what it is. So you hold that button in there and rotate it, just like mounting any other lens. And to mount it back, you just line up the dots and rotate it, and you're good to go. So on the camera itself, you have your A on your shutter speed dial up here. So if you put it on A, just this one alone, you're going to have it set to shutter speed priority, or I'm sorry, aperture priority. That means your aperture, you're going to choose your aperture manually on the lens, and it's going to select the shutter speed for you. Now, if you switch it the other way around and you put the A on the lens, but then you have your manual control over your shutter speed, that means whatever your shutter speed is, it's going to choose the correct aperture for you for whatever your exposure is going to be. Now, if you want to control or have the camera do everything for you, you can put both of them on A, and now it's fully automatic. So it's going to choose your exposure for you. It's going to choose the shutter speed and aperture both. So for some people, they might like that. Others, they might hate that. But the nice thing about it is you have, your options there. You can do it completely manual or fully automatic. It's, absolutely whatever you guys want to do. So I'm thinking that is pretty much everything on the camera. I've tried to cover as much of it as I can. I don't really know of anything else. Oh, the bottom of the camera here, this is nice to mention. This is where your batteries go, and it takes AA batteries. Really, really nice. A lot of times it takes like a weird kind of cell battery in some of these old cameras, like the little flat, expensive ones. It's nice to have AA's in there, and I honestly have never had to change the batteries once, and I've shot this camera a lot, so that's really, really nice that it has that. And it locks up into the grip there. So really convenient that it shoots AA's. You can buy rechargeables even, and that's really nice. I typically use rechargeables in all of my other equipment just because this tends to take up less battery than the others do. But what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and load up some film. So you can see I have a film insert already loaded here, and it comes in this little case, and you can see I have Portra 400 loaded in there. But what we're going to do is load up some black and white film in the insert that I currently have in the camera, and we're going to load up some Ilford Delta 3200. So to take the insert off, you just basically flip this little switch up, rotate it, and then it'll kind of just pop out on its own from that point. So what you want to do is take your film, and you want to put this, it's nice that it has like this little kind of diagram, I guess, or just this little indicator that shows you which side to load it in. So you load it in this way, and then flip this down, and then this paper, you want to make sure the black is facing out, the black paper, and you just want to feed it into the spool that you put over from your previous roll. And kind of get that started, and it's nice to have this little gear here that you can kind of turn, and then you just turn it until you see a start arrow line up with this little orange indicator right there. So I'm going to spin that. There you go, now you can see that. So now that's lined up, all you have to do is insert the film into the back of the camera, lock it back up, and then when you turn the camera on and you just fire one frame, it's going to automatically advance the film until this reads 1. There you go, and now you're ready to shoot. So just turn the camera off after that, it's ready to shoot, and that's all you have to do. So changing film in this is really fast. That's another thing I like about using it in the field, because I'm not sitting there messing with the camera, you know, constantly while people are standing around waiting on me. So it would be even nicer if it did have backs that you could already have loaded, but it's really not that big of a deal because your inserts, you can preload multiples of these. I usually have, I think, four inserts already loaded, as well as one in the camera. So whenever it comes time to change film, you know, you shoot your 16th exposure, then it's going to automatically wind the film up, and then I just pop this insert out and toss the next one in, and I can keep shooting. So if you're, you know, shooting in the field and you're going to be working in a fast-paced environment, it does help to have multiple inserts already preloaded, or at least having an assistant there with you, kind of refilling the inserts that you do have open while you're shooting. So those are just some things to keep in mind, but that's how you load it. It's really, really simple. So I've talked enough about the camera. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some of my favorite photos I've made over the last year with this camera. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed those photos. I tried to put a ton in there for my personal work, my wedding work, my family work, all that stuff in there, just so you guys could see all the different uses I've had for this camera. Obviously, I can't recommend this camera enough. It's one I've really enjoyed using, and it's something I would recommend you guys checking out if you want some more automation, like your autofocus, or your aperture priority, or your auto exposure. Any of that stuff at all, automatically winding the film, that just kind of helps speeding things up as you're shooting, which in the field, if you're out shooting a wedding or something, stuff like that does come in handy, I think. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking this out. If you want to pick up a Pentax 645, I would recommend the 645N over the original 645, just because you have, the autofocus, all of the automation in here, and it just seems to be a little bit more reliable for not that much more money. But if you are comparing the N versus the N2, I personally don't think there's a big difference. If you have the money and you want the N2 just to have the newest version, you can do that. But, I've done perfectly fine with the 645N for all kinds of different uses. So if you guys have any questions at all for me, please leave those below in the comments. Or, if you have any questions about some of the photos you saw that I shot with this camera, I'd be happy to answer anything that I can. And if you want to pick one of these up, they're easily available online. You can check out KEH, you can check out eBay, any of the film photo gear groups on Facebook. A lot of people are shooting this camera, so, and rightfully so. It's an awesome system. So, with the new year coming up, I've thought about changing things up for next year from, a different wedding season. I've been shooting my Rolleiflex a lot more lately, more than anything, and I've considered using that on weddings with just black and white film, and then everything else being on my Nikon. Not really sure yet. Even if I do end up swapping this out for something different or just selling it, it's still going to be something that I'm going to be recommending to people, just because it's an awesome system. It served me well, but you guys know I like to kind of change things up from time to time. I have my certain cameras that I always have, but other cameras I'm always, trading things around. But 645N is an awesome camera, and I can't recommend it enough. So thank you guys, as always, for watching. To stay up to date on all the content I'm putting out, make sure you guys are subscribed. And also check out my podcast. I'm going to put a link in the description. If you're not subscribed to the podcast already, definitely do so, and leave me a review if you can. That's been an amazing thing for me, to just have conversations with different photographers every single week, and, give them a place to kind of showcase their process and talk about their work, and get more eyes on their work. So definitely check that out. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.